Take it up the tailpipe. On board the jingle bus. At the same instant Allie was staring into her doom, Juice was bus surfing. He'd done stupid shit like this as a teenager, climbing out on the roofs of moving cars like the goddamned idiot adolescent he had been. This time he was at least sitting down cross-legged and not standing up with bent knees like some half-assed Point Break reject. But somehow he didn't feel any smarter now. Because not only did he have to keep from tumbling off the roof of this rickety-ass bus as it bounced over the series of escalating ruts that passed for roads in Somalia, but he had to do it while spotting non-stop for a pilotless jet fighter coming in from the north, and then he'd have to keep a tiny laser dot on it long enough for another unmanned aircraft coming from the opposite direction to land a hellfire on it from 5 miles away. It might be a little less than that, but it wasn't going to be much less. Because checking his watch, squinting against the wind, he saw it was either going to get there at the last possible second, or more likely, get there a little too late. And if this crazy-ass plan Baxter dreamed up didn't work, then Juice was going to be spotting instead for a small missile coming in at them at 1,000 miles per hour, and then he would try to leap off the moving bus before the missile impacted. Because the explosion made by an incoming hellfire made the road rash from landing on pavement at 90 miles per hour look like a pretty good outcome. Scanning the sky, Juice hit his radio. "Baxter, update. Pred is 12 miles out." Juice didn't need to ask for an updated ETA. He could work out on his own that even at its top speed with the little lawnmower engine in that thing, it was going to be more than 3 minutes until it got within range. Something appeared out on the horizon. At first it was just a tiny silver speck, but Juice put his eye to his scope, struggling to hold it steady, and the speck resolved as the UCAV. And it was low, under 500 feet, which was something, but it was also probably going 5 times as fast as the Pred and coming straight at them. So even if the Russian pilot held his fire much longer than he needed to, the Pred wasn't going to make it in time. Baxter tried to project his brainwaves through the screen, staring daggers at the ground spooling out in front of the Pred, willing it to go faster, but the old first-generation UAV was still winging its way toward them at its totally inadequate top speed. He sat, as Juice had suggested, in the last seat in the back, beside the emergency exit, which he had already unlocked. He spared a nervous look up toward the front and wondered if he should be up there supervising Al-Sif. He'd just have to trust him to do his job. Juice popped up in his ear. "Baxter, we're out of time. You've got to launch the missile." He checked the range. "Still 6 miles out. We'll all be dead by the time it's 5, but maybe the UCAV will close the distance while the missile's in the air." Baxter shook his head at no one. "If we do, we'll definitely be dead before it closes the distance. We're driving away from the Pred, with the UCAV coming in from the opposite direction. Do the geometry. If we fire now, there's no place the UCAV and us intersect that's any closer to the Pred than we are right now. The missile will splash down after 5 miles, and definitely south of us. God damn it. Listen, you've just got to keep the UCAV off us for another 70-some seconds. Fuck. Out." Only one remotely decent thing was happening that Juice could see from the top of the bus. The approaching UCAV hadn't released ammunition yet. It could have done so long before Juice ever saw it, but it seemed it hadn't. Maybe they wanted a good look at what they were about to blow into Jingle Bus Bolognese. Juice already had his magnifying sight flipped up behind his holographic red dot EOTech. It was only 3 times magnification, but it was something. And since the bus and the UCAV were coming straight at each other, he was able to keep the drone in his sights, more or less. Not steady, not in the middle, but there. He also knew there was no way he was taking this jet-powered stealth aircraft down with small arms fire, but there was actually one thing he could think of that might have a prayer of working. He targeted the sensor ball underneath, which also held its targeting laser, which the laser seeker in the nose cone of the Hellfire would detect and ride in on. If he could somehow destroy that, any missile it launched would be flying blind. He started taking the most carefully aimed shots he could, from a bouncing bus and at a stealth drone flying at low subsonic speed. He squeezed off 15 rounds before he reached an unavoidable conclusion. They weren't landing anywhere near the sensor ball. He couldn't even see any impacts, any misses that he could use to adjust. But then he did see something. An exhaust backwash behind it. It was a Hellfire launching from out of the weapons bay in the drone's belly, The three of them on the bus were now seconds away from immolation. Juice got ready to jump for it. Then he had one last idea, even more batshit crazy than all the prior ones put together. It was something Baxter had said about clouds or smoke messing with the laser targeting. Juice knew the way that worked was by masking the scattering of laser radiation off the target. With nothing coming back to the laser seeker in the missile, it would have no way to find the target. Juice yanked that smoke grenade from his belt where he had hooked it for easy access. He pulled the pin. Then he got on his stomach and slithered out to the edge of the roof, then out past it, half his torso sticking over, and the hand with the grenade held over and down, stuck right into the windshield. And as the smoke grenade sputtered to life in a shower of sparks and started spewing thick white clouds, he tried to make it cover the front of the bus. Even as he did this, he shook his head at the idiocy of it. He had basically just made himself the hood ornament on what was about to be a vehicle-interdiction drone strike. Let them speak well of me, he thought, for being the world's last biggest dumbass. Al-Sif kept the pedal down, little bells rolling and jingling at his feet, and he worked to keep the bus steady, as Baxter had instructed. The bearded one was up on the roof now, and he was evidently the only thing that was going to save them. It was unlike Al-Sif to trust in others, anyone other than himself. But here was the thing. Back in the forest at that crashed helicopter, the bearded dude had said he had a plan for holding off the Russians and keeping the three of them from being overrun and killed. And he had done what he said he was going to do, and it had worked. But only after Al-Sif threw his lot in with them and got in the fight. They had survived and prevailed. Now, as the driver's seat of the bouncing bus pummeled his ass through the torn cushion and he gripped the steering wheel with all his strength, it was hard for him not to conclude, maybe this is a team worth being a part of. Certainly more so than the dipshits in Al-Shabaab. He had always felt an affinity with the American operators, their skills, their resolve, the way everything they did was reality-based. He liked these guys. Maybe he just needed to get over himself. He would keep driving, and he would fight, if it came to that again. He would try to do his best for his team. So when the bearded face appeared at the top of the windshield upside down, and white smoke started spewing out and whipping away in the slipstream, and the lips in the beard mouthed, "Slow the fuck down," Al-Sif did just that. And he even took care to brake smoothly to keep Juice from rocketing off the front of the bus. Very soon, with less air blasting by, the smoke started thickening up. Soon Al-Sif couldn't see a damned thing, but he kept driving. Way in back, squinting into the screen of the mini GCS, Baxter had the Predator's optics zoomed all the way in on the approaching UCAV as both drones raced toward each other at their top speeds. This was all happening in the space of a few seconds, the flight time of the UCAV's incoming hellfire. But Baxter had seen it launch off its rails, heading unerringly toward them. But then suddenly its flight path got squiffy and confused, and it looked like it had no idea where it was going. The smoke barrage on the face of the bus was working. But it also looked like the hellfire was going to miss high and long, overshooting them, and the bus was still slowing, which meant it might not be so high and long after all. "Accelerate!" he shouted toward the front. "Faster! Go! Go!" Al-Sif complied, hastened by Baxter's sense of urgency. He jammed the accelerator into the floor. Juice didn't know the Jingle Bus had it in it. After slowing to something like school zone speed, now it bucked, its engine wound all the way up, and it accelerated like a Ducati. Maybe it had this spare power so it could haul around 80 Somalis with chickens in their laps. And since he was by no means expecting this, Juice slid backward on his belly toward the rear, arms flailing, digging in like a climber trying to self-arrest. But he never reached the back edge of the roof, because the bus then swerved violently to the right and tossed Juice off the left side and away like he was a flaming turd. As he flew through open air, he neither saw nor heard, but only felt, the passage of the incoming hellfire rip through the air between him and the bus, maybe a few feet above them both. It exploded in the road less than 100 feet behind them, just outside its lethal blast range, a fact Juice was grateful for as he hit the dirt with his shoulder and started rolling and tumbling at 60 miles per hour, the heat and overpressure from the blast chasing him as the ground and his own weapon pummeled him senseless. Somehow his dumbass smoke camouflage trick had worked. When he finally rolled to a stop in the mud, His vision was literally spinning from all the high-speed rotation, but he could see the bus was intact because it was still racing up the road, leaving him behind. And as his head involuntarily ticked from side to side following his spinning vision, he heard a roar overhead, and looked up and focused long enough to see the UCAV blasting by, still going the opposite direction. But it immediately pulled a 180-degree banking turn, straightened up, and fell in behind the fleeing bus. It was coming in for another attack run. Baxter popped up in his ringing ear. "Juice, munition is away. Repeat, our hellfire is away." He tried to stand up. When that didn't work, and he wobbled and fell back on his ass, he figured God was telling him to sit his ass down. He slid his left hand out on his barrel rail to check if the laser designator was still on, or even still there. It was, on both counts. He brought the weapon to his shoulder, and he tried to sight in on the tail of the UCAV. Within seconds, the next hellfire, their own, launched by Baxter from the Pred, zipped over Juice's head. Battling to hold his rifle and laser steady, he bucked himself up with some good old smack-talking. "Take it up the tailpipe, Ivan." 1 second later, a brilliant explosion erupted over the road in the middle distance. Not lowering his rifle, Juice squinted to make it out. Yeah, it was definitely over the road, too high to be the bus. His improvised laser targeting had worked. The UCAV was toast, falling from the sky in flaming pieces. Juice just lay back in the dirt and let Somalia spin around him, a little slower with each revolution. He had some injuries from his tumble off the bus, but he was too loopy to deal with them. When he felt as much as heard the bus rolling back down from the north, he weakly raised his right arm from the dirt to hail them over. He heard the school bus-style door whoosh open, and then he saw Baxter's face, expression serious, lean in over his. "Oh, good," Juice said. "You're back." "Come on," Baxter said, clasping his hand to help him up. "Cadaver One's been shot down." "What?" "And the Spetsnaz convoy is going to catch them." Juice blinked several times. "How do you know that?" "Because we've got drone coverage again." "Ah. We've also still got one hellfire left, so come on. Come on!" Juice didn't have the strength to say it, but as he let Baxter haul him to his feet, he hoped his expression said it all. "Oh yeah? Well, I'm not doing that lazing while bus surfing shit again."